Hey guys, EDDBUD here, and today I have a review for you at 100 miles of the Nike React Infinity Run FLYKNIT 2. I've had some affinity with this model from Nike since I first picked up the first version back in 2019. I think I was one of the first people to review it, in fact. So how's this second version holding up after 100 miles or 161 kilometers? A quick stats refresher on this one: 344 grams in my UK size 11, US size 12, which equates to 12.1 ounces. If you're interested, the first version of the shoe comes in at 328 grams, which is about 11.6 ounces, so there's a little bit of a difference there. You got about half an ounce, and in fairness, when you pick the two shoes up, you can feel it a little bit. It does feel a tiny bit lighter in hand. I purchased the shoe for 125 Earth credits here in the UK, though I think the retail price is about 140, so I'm going to look at it from a point of view of if I'd bought it for the proper retail price. I think 125 is not too bad for a daily use shoe. I don't think I want to go any further than that. Upper first. So upper-wise, very little degradation here to that FLYKNIT material. It's quite different to standard FLYKNIT, I've got to be honest with you. It's not the sort of stuff that you'd find on the Zoom Fly FLYKNIT, for example, or the Vaporfly 4% FLYKNIT. This is a little coarser, does feel a little bit like a sock. Gotta say, a very comfortable and fitting ride over the 100 miles. The upper isn't so thick that it gets very soggy when it gets wet. I did use this one quite extensively over the winter months, and there's just enough padding there in the tongue to protect your foot from the laces. And the lacing system works a hell of a lot better than the first version. You got those additional eyelets, and they've introduced those fly wire cables as well. I think putting all that together, it's a host of welcome additions, a bit like how welcoming the finishing line is at the end of a particularly grueling race. I have no rubbing issues at all from the FLYKNIT upper on the Infinity Run FLYKNIT 2. In fact, I find it to be a very containing fit for my foot. If not perhaps a little narrow in the arch, but I don't really notice it when I'm running. Put the shoe on, it feels kind of strange, but when you're running, which is ultimately what you're going to be using the shoe for, it doesn't really feel that strange at all. Though I would recommend probably avoiding it if you have a wider foot. As with all Nikes really, I think there's only a couple of models now that have a wide fitting. This isn't one of them. As I say, those flywire cables really do help to improve the lockdown in this version of the shoe. I think it improves the foot's ability to access that midsole, and it just improves the ride that you get from the same midsole and outsole that you got on the first version of the shoe. Never once did I struggle to gain a good lockdown in this one, and as such I never had a painful or pointless run in the shoe. It was always pleasant. Overall, an experience that was very reliable and consistent. It just kind of does what it says on the tin, this shoe, and it dries very quickly as well, this one, so if you're using it in a very wet climate, you have no need to be concerned. I'm going to give this a 2.8 out of 3 for the upper after 100 miles, only lowered very slightly by some tearing and some bobbling on the laces. They just seem to pull apart a little bit quickly, which is not something I'd experienced in any other shoes of recent time.
Midsole now.
Midsole wise, I found that the React foam just gets better and better the more you beat it up. The more you grind it down and try and torture it, it just seems to get better and sort of more soft perhaps. Slightly more forgiving. I mean, React's not the most cushioned stuff in the world, but it's just dense enough for me that you can use it on easier days and on some steady runs, and it just seems to do the trick. It just fits right in there, in the right place in terms of the amount of cushion it's offering. It's not too squashy underfoot as you get with the Zoom X and the Invincible run. It's just a bit more conservative, and actually it works. It's just sort of pleasant underfoot. There's enough squash there, and it seems to have stayed very consistent over time. I'm not seeing any major creasing here. If anything, the actual midsole foam's getting better. This certainly isn't a shoe I'd call an all-out pace offering. The midsole to me really spoke and said steady or easy or recovery runs even. But that's okay, you know. Horses for courses. Not every shoe is designed to run those blistering barnstorming paces. React surely comes though in many guises. Many formulas and many sizes. It's in the Infinity Run here in my hand, and it does feel quite different to the React that you find in the Zoom Fly 3 or the Pegasus 37. It's certainly a lot more predictable and less compressive than the Zoom X, which I've got to be honest, I didn't really like at all for recovery runs. Those lower paced easy runs in the Invincible run, it just felt like it was absorbing all of my energy rather than giving any back. Got to be honest, my legs always felt good in the Zoom X Invincible run, but my feet, not so much. Both legs and feet feel fine in this one. Just a more subtle shoe really, and it's all the better for it. The Infinity Run FLYKNIT 2 midsole makes this more of an all-rounder, perhaps in the sort of lower register paces. I can recommend the midsole, certainly. One of Nike's better daily options out there right now, or at least they've released over the past year. Very little creasing here in the midsole, and I seem to get on just fine with the 9mm heel to toe drop. The shoe certainly does place very little between your foot and the actual midsole material itself. The insole is very thin. Some of you may wish to perhaps switch that out to something with a bit more depth, but I found it gave a really good middle ground between impact protection, cushion and stability, with that wider landing platform here in the midfoot. Overall, there's lots of life left in the React Infinity Run FLYKNIT 2. I'll probably move on to some other shoes now. I've got loads of daily stuff to try out. I'll just hang on to my sweet memories of running in this one. I'm going to give it a 2.8 out of 3 for the midsole. It's a daily cruiser, but not an awful lot else, but it does that exceptionally well. Outsole now. Outsole wise, almost zero wear at 100 miles. Quite the opposite in fact to the Invincible run, which showed quite a lot of outsole wear after that amount. Grip is consistent, and the flex grooves that are cut out of the rubber really do help to make sure that the midsole can bend. There's some really great grip really on a variety of different surfaces. I'm quite surprised at the lack of wear here, and it does bode well for future use. If you guys have purchased one out there, I can see this going on for 300-400 miles before the rubber starts to wear down. There's literally no wear. I tend to get relatively minimal wear on my outsoles at 100 miles, and this is no different, but the best in that category for some time. So at that 100 mile mark, I'm going to give the outsole a 2.8 out of 3. Not an awful lot to dislike here. Perhaps they could even reduce the rubber a little bit, because it just seems to be holding up so well. I guess it would just reduce the weight of the shoe perhaps just a tiny little bit, which is always a good thing. Value now. I think value wise, £140 here for a daily shoe, a lower paced shoe, it's going to put people off. I mean, this is performing the role that the Pegasus should really perform for me. I didn't get on with the Peg 37, I'm hoping the 38 is going to have a better lockdown. But of course you've got added weight and less versatility here due to that. Would I buy it again for 125 Earth credits? Well, yes, I probably would. Would I buy it at the retail? Not a chance. It's just too high for an easy day or recovery type shoe. Regardless of the durability of the shoe, I just think it's too high, especially in the current climate. There are other options at reduced amounts of Earth credits that you can pick up, and some of those options have got infinitely better range, no pun intended, in terms of different sessions that you could use them on. So sadly, really, the Achilles heel of the shoe is value. All too often the case with Nike offerings though, isn't it? Too expensive and too much expectation. It's not going to magically stop you from getting injured. Too much marketing, but it does do a solid job in one or two categories. I can't, as such, recommend this shoe over some of the other offerings that I keep harping on about. Someone had a go at me about that actually. Keep going on about a couple of different shoes that always crop up, being great value, daily offerings. You know what those are, guys. I think if you want durability and you're not going to balk too much at the price, I think it could be a really great shoe for you. For daily runs, it's a good selection in my books, though if you can find the previous version and you're not too worried about the lockdown, that could save you some cash. So at 100 miles, I'm going to give this a 2.4 out of 3 for value. Let down by a lack of pop at higher paces. A good solid option though, especially if you can pick it up on a discount. If I totaled up the scores correctly, that gives us 10.8 out of 12, which is very, very slightly higher than my initial score. Have you been running in the Infinity Run FLYKNIT 2 or the original version? What do you think of it? Let me know down in the comments. A film recommendation for you today. I really love the National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, but there's a film that I've been watching recently with my daughter, which I think pulls from the same energy source. You guys have probably seen the 1988 film The Great Outdoors, starring the legendary John Candy. Chet Ripley and his family head down to the forest to stay in this cabin Just all manner of crazy stuff happens. There's bats in there. He has an unexpected visit from a friend of his. But the best part for me is where they head off to the restaurant and Chet tries to eat the old 96er. Oh man, what a brilliant moment. I love Dan Aykroyd's character's lines there, where he's listening to Chet's stomach and he says, "Processing nicely." A truly great film, good slapstick stuff. Yeah, the old 96er. Being vegetarian though, I'm not sure I'd go for that one. You can feel the presence here of John Hughes. He's written this one. And I find it quite interesting that actually from critics this received mixed reviews, but it's got a lot of fans. Sort of like a cult following, I suppose. So do go and check that one out. The Great Outdoors. Thanks for sticking with me to the end of the video today, guys. I very much appreciate it. If you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button and click the bell below for notifications when I launch those new videos. And it really helps the channel out too if you give this video a thumbs up like and also share this video with your running buddies. My name's EDDBUD and I'll be seeing you